everybody. Welcome back to The Bullet Point. We have a very special guest today. We're super excited to talk to Chris McNutt. He's the Executive Director of Texas Gun Rights, which is the state affiliate of the National Association for Gun Rights. We are great friends with NAGR, and Texas Gun Rights has been working hard. Chris, I don't know if you slept in a month. Every time, I checked the news feed, it looked like you were at the state capitol giving us updates on the fight to get constitutional carry passed in Texas. And great news, we just heard that you got the bill across the finish line and it's headed for Governor Greg Abbott's desk, and he said that he'd sign this bill. So tell us, it looks like you got it passed just in time. The legislative session is about to end, so it came down to the wire, but can you walk us through how you got this legislation through the door?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a nearly decade-long battle here in the state of Texas. NAGR and Texas Gun Rights, started this fight all the way back in 2013, leading into the 2014 election cycle. 2015, we worked with State Representative Jonathan Stickland to get the first ever constitutional carry bill filed in the state of Texas. And year after year, we just continued moving the needle by connecting the actions of legislators in the legislative season to the election season. And just, year after year, we continued to put constitutional carry in the forefront of every gun owner's, mind. So that way they knew that was the premier gun rights legislation to push for in the state of Texas. And I think, after many bruising primary elections and general elections, the political establishment here in the state of Texas just finally realized that they can't politically suffer the consequences of letting constitutional carry die at the hands of Republican leadership, once again. Like you said, we came down to the wire. It took almost all of the session to get it through. Because of Senate amendments added by Dan Patrick, it kind of delayed the process and made things a little foggy of whether we were actually going to get the bill or not. But the House and Senate both approved the conference committee report this week, and now the bill is going to go to the governor's desk just in the nick of time.
Yeah, that's wonderful news for Texans and really for the whole nation. So as a reminder to viewers who might not be familiar with this type of law, it basically says that law-abiding citizens can exercise their Second Amendment rights the way that the Constitution intended, right? It's constitutional carry, so that means that you don't have to get a permission slip from the government to exercise your Second Amendment rights. So this obviously a huge victory we're celebrating, as we noted, but this is really kind of a sad state of affairs when we think about it, that we have to work so hard to just restore what should have been law the whole time, right?
Yeah, and really, I blame the institutional gun lobby for a big part of it. Year after year, they've always given these bloated, puffed up ratings to legislators, making them seem like they're pro-gun, even though they haven't actually taken any tough votes on anything. And that was a big part of the hurdles and the roadblocks to get through in the state of Texas, because as far as the average voter knows, they just think, oh well, my representative has an A rating, so they're pro-gun. Because for the last decade or more, they are able to just say that I support the Second Amendment and get reelected without actually having to do anything to approve it or to prove it. So, we've just really shifted the climate around that and showed the political class that they actually have to back up those words if they speak them in election time.
Constitutional carry is super pro-liberty, pro-constitution, obviously, policy, and we've seen this movement for constitutional carry across the nation, especially in the last couple of years. It's really exploded. I believe Texas is the 6th state in this year alone. We're not even halfway through the year, and we've already had 6 states now adopt constitutional carry. I know Tennessee is not perfect and has some problems with it, but we're moving in this direction that constitutional carry is really sweeping the whole nation. I think we're up to 21 states now, and I haven't seen this much coverage for a state adopting constitutional carry as I've seen with Texas. I saw the BBC was reporting on it as if it's this shocking thing that Texas, this wild state, is going to let people carry a gun without a permit. But this has been the law in many states. I think Vermont has had it since the beginning of statehood. And we see, state after state adopting this policy. Why has there been such a boom in constitutional carry? What's driving this, and what has maybe changed the hearts and minds of voters or legislators in your case?
Yeah.
I believe.
I really think it's a multitude of things. I mean, obviously, at the national level across the various states, the National Association for Gun Rights has really been laying the groundwork in many of these states to put constitutional carry at the forefront of debate. So you've got that mixed in with all of the lockdowns and stuff that we saw in 2020, and threats to defund the police, and all this uncertainty of violence in the streets, mixed in with the Biden administration coming in that's very anti-gun and hostile to our gun rights. That now I think everything has just reached a boiling point to where people expect nothing less than the full restoration of the right to keep and bear arms. And, one of the best ways to do that is by passing constitutional carry. As you said, there's actually, I think Texas is the 5th state this year to pass constitutional carry. If Louisiana ends up following suit, which it seems like they might be, they'll be 6. We've never seen that many states in 1 year. I think 4 was the record before, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's a very big year for gun rights. Nearly half of the country has it, and I really think, once the ink dries after Governor Abbott signs the bill, he still hasn't signed it yet. It's still very important for people to encourage him to make good on his promise to sign it. But once that happens, I really think other states are just going to start falling like dominoes. People are going to see, that once this law goes into effect in the state of Texas, that it's not the doom and gloom and the Wild West and blood in the streets that like all of the radical left tries to portray. And with Texas having some of the largest cities in the country, it'll take away all of those talking points that this is just a rural carry. Even though there's constitutional carry in places like Phoenix, Arizona, which is a very large city, people still hone in on the fact that it's just, smaller states. So Texas, second largest, most populated state in the entire country. I really think that the dominoes are just going to start to fall when people see that constitutional carry does not have the negative consequences now that Texas has passed it.
Right, and we talked about all these other states who have had this policy in place for years, and actually I think the top 3 safest states in America, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, are all constitutional carry states. And you contrast that with the most dangerous cities in America, Baltimore, Chicago, LA, places like that have the strictest gun control. So when you just look at it that way, and what's more, we've passed this constitutional carry constitutional carry law in all these states, and last I checked, there was not a huge surge in gun violence in places like Utah or Montana or these places that have embraced these laws. So I don't think the people who are against these types of laws really have a leg to stand on. Are there other misconceptions that you found from opponents to the constitutional carry bill, specifically in Texas? I know that Texas had before now a training requirement and some safety courses and things like that. There seems to be a perception that if you don't require that people are all of a sudden going to act irresponsibly and use guns in an unsafe manner, but we just don't see any evidence for that. And if that were the case, like we said, all these states with constitutional carry would just be insanely dangerous, but that's just simply not the truth, right? And these permit laws actually prevent people, maybe people with lower incomes, people who don't have time to take off work to go get specific training, do all these things, jump through all these hoops.
Yep.
It's kind of discriminatory when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it just lowers the barriers to entry for lower income individuals to exercise their God-given right to self-defense and protect their families and their loved ones. And training has been one of the biggest arguments or lack of training has been one of the biggest arguments that proponents or opponents have tried to use in the state of Texas. But looking back to Phoenix again, and the state of Arizona, who've had constitutional carry for 10 years now, training and permit issuance has actually doubled in the 10 years since they became a constitutional carry state. And, we believe that's because, a multitude of things. For one, people still get the permits because they want reciprocity with other states, so that way they can travel outside of their state and not have to disarm. But number two is, as more people start getting familiar with carrying firearms, then they'll want to go ahead and get that permit anyway, just so that way they can go ahead and carry it, for those reciprocity purposes that I mentioned. But not only that, law-abiding gun owners overwhelmingly are some of the safest individuals that there are. So naturally, we just want to get training, and I think that the proof is in the data that we've seen in Arizona and several other states, that both training and permit issuance increases. Because that's the other misconception too, is that constitutional carry gets rid of the licensing system, and that's simply not the case. It stays in place in every state that has passed constitutional carry. It's just simply made optional instead of mandatory.
Okay. I know you're a busy man, so I will let you go soon, but people write to me all the time asking, they're upset, they're worried about the future of this country, and they want to do something about gun control, and they go and they vote. But as we've seen in the past, people who say they're pro-gun don't always follow through, or they don't, they do the bare minimum. They don't support some of the most important freedom-granting laws. So what I always tell people is to support your local gun rights group, to support organizations like the National Association for Gun Rights, Texas Gun Rights, find a no-compromise state affiliate and support them, volunteer with them, give them money, do what you can, because you're really the voice for people whenever politicians fail to do the job that they promise. So can you explain to our viewers what it's like, kind of the day-to-day, what it's like there on the ground at the state capitol, what you're doing to fight for these people who kind of feel like their hands are tied? They voted for the Republican, they voted for the pro-gun, quote-unquote, candidate, but they feel helpless. So you're there to pick up the slack and make sure these types of laws get passed. So what is it that you do, and how have you been successful?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you mentioned, we've been in the Capitol a lot this year, and thankfully, I actually got some help this year. We hired Bethany Young, who's our legislative director, and she's really been on the ground almost every day for the last couple of weeks when I couldn't be there. And that's been a tremendous help, because she keeps a pulse on what's being said and done in the Capitol, and keeping those lines of communications open with the legislators, so that way we know what to expect and what's going to happen in the bill. And if we're hearing anything that there could be points of contention that could hinder the bill, and that gives us the information that we need to mobilize our members through email, through text message, through mail. We've even run some TV and radio ads this year. Just putting the information out there to have our members lobby their legislators and tell them to do the right thing and pass constitutional carry. That's one big area where we differ from a lot of other organizations, is we primarily use our members to lobby the legislators. We're not going down there to rub shoulders and make friends and wine and dine these politicians and become buddy-buddy with them. We're just there to let them know that, we support constitutional carry, and, these 300,000 members and supporters from across the state that are part of our organization support it too, and they are your constituents, and you need to do right by them.
One of the biggest things I've noticed that NAGR does and the state affiliates do is to alert gun owners directly as soon as there's an anti-gun amendment added, because these bills get passed back and forth between the House and Senate. You don't really know what's going on behind closed doors unless you spend all day every day actually there, and people have jobs, people have families, they don't have time to be doing all this, but that's what NAGR, Texas Gun Rights, is doing on the ground, doing that work for the constituents. So as soon as something happens that they know would displease their members, you alert your supporters, which I know is really important, because they try to sneak anti-gun stuff in there all the time. They try to make these amendments. I believe that the Texas constitutional carry bill was passed in a pretty clean manner that you're happy about, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were several amendments that were added on by the Senate that we would have rather not seen, but it's still a pretty good bill. There's a lot of people that are getting stuck on some of these amendments, but ultimately We're not adding any new restrictions. We're advancing the ball further than it's ever been in the state of Texas by allowing those that are at least 21 years old and a law-abiding citizen to carry a handgun without having to beg permission from the government or paying a tax. So there were some amendments that we didn't like that, adds penalty enhancements, but ultimately it's still a good bill, and we shouldn't let perfect get in the way of good.
I agree. And you think this is going to be a domino effect for the rest of the country? I mean, we already have 21 states, but Texas is big. And as you said, it's just going to prove that constitutional carry makes states safer, not less safe. So we'll keep our eye out for the next state that NAGR will successfully get passed into constitutional carry, and eventually, perhaps the whole country, fingers crossed, will be constitutional carry, and we won't have to worry about reciprocity. We can just live as free Americans as the Constitution intended.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for all of the hard work you've done on behalf of Texans and Americans everywhere, and we hope to chat with you soon.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of The Bullet Point, and of course, we'll be back next week, so stay tuned for that.